You're watching the NFL Strategy Show presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports with Dave Loughran, Chris Spags, taking an early look at ownership. Going to break down some of the numbers, go a little bit more in depth than we did yesterday, and get you ready for tomorrow's game-by-game breakdown. We're midway through the week, Spags, and here we are, ownership projections being run right now, and we can take our first look.
There's a lot of extra love they had to put into the ownership this week because it's not as obvious of a slate. You got no Mahomes. You have a lot of the big ticket items not in the lineups this week. So, they're putting that extra love and care that we always look for, our handcrafted Osmo ownership projections, which of course you can get yourself at osmo.com/join for prices as low, Lofty, $3.95 a week. You know how low that is? That's
a steal, Spags.
It is. That's like what you were paying at the airport for all of your drinks and whatever over 37 hours straight.
Yeah, I was like, all right, I need a drink. So I just got a double Jack and Ginger. It was $27.
There was one time I was stuck in LaGuardia because I missed my flight. I went to the wrong airport in New York to go to WrestleMania one year because I'm an idiot. And ended up in the airport there because I missed one flight. Then the flights got delayed because of weather concerns for 8 hours. I spent $400 in the airport that day eating pizza and drinking alcohol.
Oh, dude, no question. Like, it's not even a debate. I thought about eating the ice and keeping the cup just to not feel so bad about it.
You got to make it go far. That's all you can do.
No question. But we're happy to have all of you with us today. Of course, we're going to break it all down, man. We do this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So this is our ownership show. And Brian, we started a couple minutes late because we wanted to make sure that ownership, the latest run, was updated so we can give you guys the best possible content and not half-ass it because, we don't do that around here. But Spags, anything that stands out to you first before we get into ownership, whether it be injuries that are significant, just big names either potentially not being on the field or certain players returning? What do we have?
The biggest thing to me that I'm curious about, honestly, is going to be if Dwayne Haskins is in there again, because I've been playing the Patriots defense nonstop. That really bailed out a lot of my lineups. Actually gave me some decent leverage on the field last week because the Patriots weren't owned. And Patriots defense on DraftKings is going to be $4,300 this week. And they're at the highest price defense, it looks like pretty much everywhere. I really think this is an important one because I think Haskins is not ready for the big leagues. I think that Washington team is in disarray. And that was so disappointing to me last week. Case Keenan was my contrarian QB on the Contrary, the show we do Saturdays, 2 p.m. Eastern if you want to check it out, doing this week with Adam Pfeiffer, our matchups column guy. But Haskins looked like he should not be playing right now. And I thought he was a good big arm guy. He looked good in his first drive, but man, he is brutal. He is just not good.
Yo, it was really ugly. It was heinous. And, it's bad when it's like, all right, we'll bench Kirk Cousins we'll bench Case Keenum and throw in Dwayne Haskins. I say Kirk Cousins because Kirk Cousins appears to be a very popular topic of conversation in YouTube chat right now, which is a perfect segue into ownership. We've got it updated. If you are a member, Awesemo Plus, or you have access to the ownership projections, they were updated 1 minute ago, so we're ready to rock if you want to follow along. If not, awesemo.com/join NFL strategy is the sign-up code, all one word. All right, Spags, let's get into it, man. Looking at it now, we'll go a little bit position by position here. We're not going to give everything away, but we do want to give you guys enough information to make it valuable on these shows. Sal Vetri and I discussed early salaries, took a first look at salaries across the board yesterday. If you missed any of it, check it out, youtube.com/awesemo. But right now you're looking at pretty balanced ownership at quarterback. We tend to see this a lot, but Deshaun Watson, the quote unquote chalk. I say that only because he's 3% higher owned than the next closest player, but at 11%. By the way, all of this is subject to change throughout the week. We will certainly see a lot of movement as far as ownership projections go. That happens anywhere. But right now, Deshaun Watson against just an Atlanta team that looks downright atrocious in every facet of the game. Lost Keanu Neal in the secondary. Can Deshaun Watson bounce back and stay somewhat protected in the pocket, or at least find ways to get out of trouble when the pocket collapses?
Yeah, I mean, I would hope so. I think going against this Atlanta team was getting no pressure. Just a 3.9% sack rate for them on the year. So we could say that's 4%. A spot for a guy like Deshaun Watson is getting sacked at a 12% clip on the year. It's going to be a pretty big fall off for the Atlanta defense. So I think the spot, I'm actually a little surprised Watson is the chalk because I actually wrote him up in a slant and go this week, my column that I do for Awesemo.com. And I thought that he would be popular. I didn't know that he would be. I mean, the ownership spread out enough. I guess it's not that crazy.
He's chalky because you wrote him up, Spags.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's what the ownership elves were. They were like, we got to read this column real fast before we do all this stuff.
That's why it took so long to update, because you didn't release the article till last night.
That's why, I think Watson deserves it, man. We saw last week, I wrote about Marcus Mariota, and last week, I thought that was a spot where if there's ever a time to play Marcus Mariota coming off a time where people are questioning his ability to be a starting quarterback in that Thursday night game. He came back, responded. I did not think a game stack of Marcus Mariota would have been the move to go to, with running it back with Mohamed Sanu actually would have gotten you in some decent tournament placements there. But still, Mariota looked good against Atlanta, really looked rejuvenated. I think this could be the same thing for Watson, where he's just not going to be under pressure. We should see more room for Hopkins to operate. Will Fuller as well. We could see a concentration of targets because Kenny Stills probably isn't going to be in there. Kiki QT certainly a risk to take some touches, but I like this stack quite a bit. And I think Watson and Hopkins, and maybe even that breakout Fuller week where he's been an air yards guy still one of the dominant guys there. They've been just kind of waiting to blow up, and they just haven't been able to get there.
Yeah, man. I mentioned this on yesterday's show with Sal that if you look at Deshaun Watson, he's obviously always under pressure, but in terms of adjusted completion percentage on deep balls, he has like the second highest rate in the league.
Yeah, he's a good thrower. I mean, the thing is I liked his little thing with the press. Did you see that clip of him like kind of getting defensive?
Oh, the breakdown? It was phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, and then he broke it down. He explained what he's seeing, and it kind of also explains why maybe he's been a bit more reluctant to make the errant throws, because I think he's feeling a little more pressure than you would think with him and how he played out there. But he's had like moments of brilliance this year. That game where he was driving against the Saints and just kept putting up points and kept going back at them. The Saints defense has been up and down, but I think Watson has a lot of upside we haven't seen quite yet. Has a rushing ability as well as the deep ball accuracy you mentioned. Like, everything should be lining up for him at one of these weeks. And this week does seem like the one where people are going to be on him, though.
Yeah, I think you're right. Pro Football Focus has Atlanta with one of the better pass rushing grades. But when you look at their ability to generate sacks, they have they have only 5 sacks on the season. And, to me, that's obviously, pass rush is one thing, but are you getting enough pressure to where you're actually getting the quarterback down? Not just hits, not just rush or hurrying the passer, but actually getting the sack. Because if not, Deshaun Watson's the type of guy that can certainly avoid that and hopefully create something with his legs. But yeah, only one team, get this, has fewer sacks than the Atlanta Falcons this year, and this is even more surprising. It's the Philadelphia Eagles.
Really? Not the Broncos?
Well, I'm looking at it. No, the Broncos have 5. The Eagles have 3.
Oh, that's right, because they got a bunch this week. Yeah, wow, that's crazy. The Eagles' defense really regressed this year quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going on there. In that same game, though, interestingly, Matt Ryan also getting the second highest projected ownership. Again, this will change. Maybe not too much. Quarterback doesn't go that crazy. And then you've got guys, mixed in anywhere from like 6 to 8%. Guys like Wentz and Dak and Dalton and Rivers. Wentz is probably going to get some hype. I think Deshaun Jackson's status is huge when it comes to Wentz, just based on what type of ceiling do you get from Wentz when Jackson is in there. And then Cuyler Marie, it's strictly a matchup thing and plays run. Let's talk about Murray for a second here against the Bengals team, 2 cellar dwellers out there in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean, I think the spot's interesting. I mean, you have 2 of the faster paced teams in the league. Arizona still running at a 23.9 second pace per snap. Also, Cincinnati running at 26.7 seconds, which would have been high last year. This year, not quite as high because teams playing at a faster pace overall. But a decent run total. And it looks like a spot where, looks like there's going to be some ownership on that entire Arizona stack. But we saw Cincinnati really got strafed by Mason Rudolph. And granted, Mason Rudolph, a lot of low risk throws, a lot of short throws to Jalen Samuels. Really didn't get Juju involved. Only had 1 or 2 deep throws to Deontay Johnson. Wasn't going that crazy, but Cincinnati just wasn't able to cover everything, not generating much pressure. So this is kind of an ideal spot. I'm a little surprised it's not an over 50 implied total between the 2 teams, just because bad teams and it seems like a fast pace. But I think the spot for Kyler, they're not generating pressure. Cincinnati, a really poor pressure team as well, poorly graded by PFF with just a 38 coverage grade and also only a 70 pass rush grade. So that's not terrible, but still generating just 4.2% sack rate. That's going to help out Cuyler quite a bit. And I think that's really been his big flaw is under pressure. And could see some concentration too if Christian Kirk is out, because I think there's going to be more targets to go around for Larry Fitzgerald, David Johnson. I like this game quite a bit, and I'm not opposed to playing Andy Dalton, even though, holy crap, is he terrible on Monday night.
Oh, it was bad. I give him credit for not walking off the field. I mean, dude,
they were letting everybody just go up to him and just like over and over again. They just gave up on that line completely.
Right. If I didn't know any better, he did something. He shit in the pillows of all his offensive linemen. I mean, something must have happened because I have never seen such disrespect from a line. They just got blasted time in and time out. It's really hard to look at that and have really any confidence going forward. But I guess another thing here is you just talked about the Bengals pass rush, right? What do you make of Arizona and their ability to get pressure on the quarterback? Because I really do believe with certain quarterbacks, man, that facing a good or bad pass rush based on the quality or lack thereof of their offensive line makes a huge difference, especially for someone that isn't mobile like Andy Dalton.
Yeah, I think Arizona can certainly get him. I mean, we saw basically Pittsburgh, it didn't seem like we're coming out with a heavy blitz focus early in that game. They just kept getting pressure. And then once they realized they could get pressure easily, then they started sending more guys. And I think that was sort of where it came for them, was that they were probably intending not to, because they really haven't been as good of a blitzing team as they were in previous seasons. But I think it's certainly possible Arizona gets pressure, but 25.5 point implied total for Cincinnati. I think that does indicate that Vegas has some degree of interest. And I think they do have weapons here. I mean, Mixon hasn't gotten going yet, but we saw last year he is a player who can do a lot of damage when he gets volume. Also, Tyler Boyd has not been bad. I mean, not been great either. I don't think he gets enough separation to be a primary receiver. But with John Ross out there, who's going to be out for a few weeks now, he's been a good player to help get some coverage off of Boyd. Auden Tate's looking pretty good. Tyler Eifert, I think, is still a big body who can get things done. And we've seen how Arizona gets killed by tight ends. So I think you kind of have to, if they blitz and things don't work out, Andy Dalton could take advantage. It's just a matter of which Dalton are we getting. Are we getting the guy who throws 4 touchdowns? Or are we getting the guy who looked like a cartoon turtle in the backfield there, just was a terrified man each time?
Oh, man. Yeah, it's tough because I actually, and we'll get to him shortly, I actually have some interest in Joe Mixon. And I think, well, we'll get there in a second. I don't want to get ahead of our skis. But the lower ownership here at quarterback, there are a few guys I want to ask you about. None of these guys I have a particularly strong lean on, but because I discussed plenty of them yesterday, I want to get your take. One of them being all the way down there, virtually zero ownership, Luke Falk. Now, you say, why would you mention that? Well, the only reason I mention that is because when you talk about a bad secondary, the Eagles have been decimated by injuries, and they were already bad before the injuries in that respective category. I mean, it's been really, really bad, Spags, to the point where 400-yard passing for back-to-back-to-back quarterbacks isn't even that much of a surprise. So Luke Falk is not good. He is sub 5K. Eagles secondary is garbage. They should be playing with the lead, though. Would you consider him at sub 1% ownership?
I mean, look, the Eagles are giving up 324 yards per game passing. That's a lot, as you mentioned. They just haven't looked great overall. Do we know for sure that Falk is going? Because I thought there was a chance that Darnold could be in. I think I wrote up my column assuming that Darnold had a shot at playing, but do we have confirmation either way yet?
I thought there was some bad news on him the other day.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something I've been looking to watch, because I think Darnold could have a big day, but I really don't know that I trust Falk's talent. I mean, they don't seem like they trust his talent either.
Yeah, no question. Okay, so you're right. It looks like they could wait. This actually came out, or this report's from this morning, actually only 10 minutes ago, that he'll return to practice today, increasing his cardio activity. And although he hasn't been cleared for contact, he's taking a major step forward as he works his way back from mononucleosis, an illness that often causes fatigue even after other symptoms have diminished. Coach Adam Gase said the Jets could wait till Sunday morning to make a final decision on Darnold's availability for 1 p.m. Game in Philadelphia. He'll presumably be listed as a limited participant on Wednesday's injury report. So, You're telling me there's a chance.
I mean, only 15.3 implied points for the Jets. So I think Vegas currently would be leaning towards Luke Falk being the guy once again. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I get it. I think the thing, though, for me that's an issue is that I'd rather go to Joe Flacco. I mean, like, I know he sucks. I know the narrative is really the media narrative of football analysts. I've heard the Ringers podcast just abusing Joe Flacco this week. But from a fantasy perspective, he's been creating value for Emmanuel Sanders and for Cortland Sutton. He's passing enough. I think he's in a spot that's winnable, and his price is down now all the way. And he actually had a decent fantasy day last week. So I would be more inclined to go with him against a Chargers defense who's really banged up. Melvin Ingram was hurt last week. I think there's still a lot of issues in the secondary there. I think there's enough things where I could see going to Flacco more at a cheaper price, knowing that he's going to have the volume versus Luke Falk, who, I mean, I really am not impressed by. He's been accurate, I guess, but he just looks like a guy who just shouldn't be in the league.
I have no faith in this guy whatsoever. But, when you have a good matchup, we got to at least talk about it.
Yep.
Sam Darnold's interesting because, if he comes back, what type of condition is he going to be in? It's like his body just went through hell. I haven't had mono, but I know plenty of people that have, and it just wipes you out.
Yeah, I haven't had it either. I hear there's like a large spleen thing that goes along with it. So if his spleen is hurting, that's not where you want to be as a quarterback. I don't know. I mean, like, honestly, he could be out there with a spleen that's literally like exploding from his body and be a better player than Luke Falk, I think. So if he's in there, if he's in there, I think it's a great play. Like Robbie Anderson, you mentioned the Eagles coverage just so bad, getting burned by deep balls. He seems like a guy who'd be more in play. Luke Falk not going to throw that ball for the most part, that Sam Darnold might. And Jamison Crowder, we saw in week 1 with Darnold, just getting peppered with targets. I think the Eagles would certainly be able to give that up again. And those guys would be in play, I think, if Darnold is in there. And if Luke Falk is in there, I think you're just going to see them watching and looking sad.
Even if his spleen game isn't strong on Sunday, I feel like I feel like Robbie Anderson connection and Crowder actually isn't the craziest idea, given that they'd be playing from behind. So that's definitely something to watch. Because
people definitely underrate the spleen, I think, as a
right. I think
it's important to your body overall. Yeah. Very integral, even though we don't talk about it a lot.
Right. I mean, yeah. You know what? Well, it rarely comes up organically.
Yeah, no, there's not enough spleen talk. And that's really been one of the things we focus on here at Osmo.com. Every data advantage we can, it all starts with the spleen.
Spleen talk, that's right. Any other cheap quarterbacks or even actually any lower owned projected guys? You talked about Flacco. We talked about Darnold possibly being a good play if he's active. Anybody else here?
I really don't like this guy, and but the ownership is so low, and the team total's pretty reasonable. And Tampa Bay has been getting strafed by the pass.
Teddy, I was thinking Teddy too.
Yeah, Teddy Two Gloves. He's just not a good fantasy quarterback. He doesn't throw it deep. He does seem to throw it to Michael Thomas. I think he still could also throw it more to Jared Cook. I think he obviously can throw it more to Alvin Kamara. Only threw him 2 and 3 times last week. But there's still enough ways for Bridgewater to derive value from this offense, even if he himself isn't good. And Tampa Bay just really, really stout versus the run, bad versus the pass. That's the one kind of spot where Bridgewater could be useful. I don't know if he has the upside, but he's in play, I think.
Yeah, I think the only issue I would have is, outside of Michael Thomas, who do I want to stack him with? Like, could it be Kamara? Sure. But who would it be? Would it just be Kamara and Thomas, or would you feel comfortable going with Ted Ginn?
I would think it would be Kamara and Thomas. I could see going Jared Cook and Thomas, even though Jared Cook really doing nothing. And also, he's really just not involved in that offense. I don't know why they signed him, to be honest. They should just keep running out Josh Hill if you're going to sign Jared Cook. Yeah. With like a 4.40 and just not get him out in that space at all. But yeah, I think those would be the obvious guys who maybe Jared Cook has that week that he seems like he's capable of. He's certainly capable of physically, not maybe capable of in that offense, but I would say Thomas and Kamara seem like the obvious ones to go to, but Kamara's price is tough if he's going against a tough run defense.
I was going to say the same. I mean, we'd be hoping that he'd be able to produce through the air. Tampa's run defense has been very, very, very impressive this season. So
yeah, given 59 yards per game, that's like an insane number. And given the guys they face good running backs.
Yeah, honestly, the only team that got him for anything was the San Francisco 49ers in week 1 for 98 yards. They held McCaffrey to 39 yards. Barkley and company were held to 72, and Gurley and that backfield to 28. I mean, my God, dude.
Yeah, they're stout. I mean, Todd Bowles, not a guy who's gotten a lot of credit. Definitely didn't get credit as a Jets coach, but if you want to talk about overhauling a defense and making the most out of a team that was just deceived defensively across the board last year, and now they're actually stopping the run and getting in the backfield play after play. Very impressive so far.
One thing as we move to running back here that disappoints me a little bit. As I mentioned, I talked a lot about Mixon yesterday, and he really had all of the work in the backfield up until the fourth quarter when the game was entirely out of reach, and that was really encouraging. And then once it was a wrap, you saw Gio Bernard come in and mop up for literally the final 12 minutes of the game. So a significant period of time. I thought Mixon would go overlooked just because he has not produced well this season. He had 20 total looks last game. Right now, however, he's coming in as, the fifth highest owned running back. I still like him for sure, and I think he's at a good price. I feel like this could be that game, but I'm a little bit surprised by that. What are your thoughts on Dalvin Cook right now being so far below, say, Christian McCaffrey and Christian McCaffrey based on the similar price points?
So I love Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is one of my season-long buy-ins. So we talked about pretty much all the content we did in the preseason. I loved him. I think he's backed out everything that I thought he could do. He's been healthy, which, knock on wood that continues going because I have him in our – oh, by the way, just talk real fast, Laffy, about how I drubbed you in our Awesome Celebrity League.
Oh, did you? I didn't see it.
No, I did.
I honestly didn't see it, but now I'll have to look.
Chris Godwin pinned your nostrils and gave you a good mouth. but yeah, no, I'm 3-1 in that league. I'm not getting the write-ups in our content from, but I'm doing it with all moxie too. I started Frank Gore one week. I started Preston Williams this week.
Oh, that's beautiful. I mean, hey, whatever works, right?
You got to do what you can. Got to take advantage of all this research we're doing. But I love Dalvin Cook. I think he's a very talented player. But the narrative really seems to be spinning the other way. Kirk Cousins is bringing Adam Thielen on his radio show to hash out the issues they're having with the pass game, taking mea culpas. Like, I don't know, man. This seems like a spot where Kirk Cousins just needs to get some easy scores. Doesn't mean Dalvin Cook can't get there too. We've seen this Giants defense who's bad versus everybody who's not Dwayne Haskins. And I think it's a spot really where Cousins he's got to build his confidence. I think he has to build his confidence. He has to build the receiver's confidence. I think Thielen is questioning things in a noteworthy way. I really want the pass game. I want to see the pass game go off here because I think they just need it.
Oh, man. I was at Green Bay and I forgot to set all my lineups. I should have put Jordan Howard in.
that would have been helpful if you started Jordan Howard. would have been good. I'm not buying into either, but I don't know if you are, but that was so strange.
You did. You smoked me pretty good. I'm 2-2. I'm still there.
You're in the hunt, baby. That's all you can ask.
Dude, I'm different. I really feel differently than everyone on Jordan Howard in this backfield in Philly. And I did before the season even began. There was so much talk and concern about it being a 3 or 4-headed backfield. I don't buy it for a second. Like, you have Darren Sproles, who's 100 years old. Wendell Smallwood got cut. Their two leading rushers from last season were cut before the season started. And Corey Clement was a flash in the pan. Like, as we're seeing and we saw last week, Sproles saw only 11% of the snaps, 11% of the snaps, and he touched the ball once, one carry for 4 yards. Outside of that, it was exclusively a Howard and Sanders backfield. Howard with 15 carries, 4 targets. Now, I don't see that happening all the time. I don't see receiving touchdowns happening all the time. But Miles Sanders also with 11 carries. What I expect to see is the hot hand get the rock between only the two of them. I don't think you're going to see like we did in week 1 where, Sproles gets the hot hand and sees 10 carries. Or of course not Clement. I expect it to be either Howard or Sanders. I feel confident about that. What I don't feel confident about is who it's going to be from week to week.
Yeah, I mean, I think Howard, I've bought into the hype in previous years where, like, when he was a Bears running back, he looked good. And they're like, he's adding the pass to his repertoire. He's not going to be a pass catching back. And then it's like, oh, never mind. They didn't really use him that way. And he showed, you keep getting all this hype every preseason. Maybe you actually are a good running back who just deserves the opportunity. He's been better than Miles Sanders in a limited sample size, getting 4.7 yards per attempt. Sanders closer to 4. I think that's sort of, Jordan Howard's experience. I think he's been through the ringer enough times now where if you give him the load, he can handle it. I just think the question is the hot hand approach, like you mentioned, like Sanders has some explosive ability. So maybe he takes away from Howard enough each game where it's tough for him to get there. And And that load too, like seeing almost 20 touches, like I don't think any Philly running back is seeing that often, that many touches that often.
Yeah, right. No, I agree with that. I just know it's only the two of them now. It's you're not going to be worried about however many are in that backfield. With that in mind, though, I'm not looking towards Howard or Sanders this week. I don't think you need to. But the other guys at the top here, Le'Veon Bell right now is projected to get quite a bit of ownership. That's a little bit surprising to me, Spags. Not because he doesn't see really more volume than anybody, but because this is a very, very stout Philadelphia Eagles run defense. Very, very good. You look at their production from last year and then this year, they've allowed 28 rushing yards to Washington, 57 to Atlanta, 86 to Detroit, and then 77 to Green Bay. Granted, you haven't faced an Elliott or a Barkley yet, but it is a very good run defense. That said, they give up a lot of yardage to running backs out of the backfield in the passing game. I just don't know if you're going to Le'Veon Bell just to get his pass catching work and hoping that he can give you like 80 yards rushing. I think that's a stretch. So it's kind of tough for me relying on him in the passing game, even if it's PPR. What are your thoughts on Bell here?
I mean, the price looks nice for Bell. That was one thing that did jump out to me, is that he does seem cheap given that he's got 25 touches per game so far this year. And
Sure.
what we know of him, he's just a good running back. But yeah, I agree. Philly's run defense, really the one part that's looked good this year. The secondary has been bad. And maybe Bell can be used more as a pass catcher, though Adam Gase really hasn't been that inventive with splitting him out and using him on more creative routes. Mostly been using him for kind of the standard running back plays that you would expect in the pass game. But yeah, I think the price is appealing. I get that part of it. I think as a value, I like what he offers up. But I agree, the matchup isn't great. And if he's going to be that highly owned, I think I would be inclined to come under, just because he's talented, but I don't think this is a good matchup. It's hard to imagine Philly doesn't just blow the doors off the Jets if Luke Falk is at quarterback.
Yeah, well, who knows? The Eagles do not get off to early good starts, so we'll have to see. But hopefully that changes. The past 2 weeks, we've seen them improve in that facet of the game. Looking at guys, in double digits here, what do you make of Austin Eckler, knowing that things are getting a little bit murkier in LA, with Gordon expected to make his debut? He could be limited though. Anthony Lynn said I can't put him in and run him 30 times next week, but that's very vague, Spags. So I don't know. Eckler's price tag has come down quite. It actually dropped $1,300 on DraftKings since last week, but right now he's getting around 13-14% ownership. Do you run that risk?
Yeah, I don't know that I trust that. I think to me, this is more a week where I'd be willing to go back to Keenan Allen in the hopes that, this game's a little more competitive. Denver's pass defense has been not great. The run defense has been worse, as we saw last week, going against Fournette, and how he just gouged them over and over again and had these long runs where he just stiff armed and abused guys like he was the big kid in a peewee league. But I think, for Gordon and Eckler, I think you're expecting probably 15 touches each as a max, as this guy's kind of a ceiling. And at their price points, I don't know how you get there. They could certainly have that value, but I like McCaffrey again. I like Zeke a lot in his spot going against Green Bay. Green Bay has been bad against the rush, good against everything else. So I really don't know that I would want to get to these guys too much. And I think Allen is kind of the obvious play after he burned everybody last week.
Right. And I think another spot here that sticks out, we're going to see some movement, but early ownership is always interesting to look at the way it changes. Elliott getting less than half of Christian McCaffrey's projected ownership right now. To me, that's just not right. We saw Green Bay get absolutely exposed in the run game, particularly up the middle against the Philadelphia Eagles. That clearly appears to be their weakness. And Ezekiel Elliott, ever since he got back into the mix in week 1, he's seen 23 carries against Washington, 25 total looks, 22 total looks against Miami in a game where they literally didn't need him. And then 18 carries, 7 targets, 25 total looks in an inefficient but voluminous game against the New Orleans Saints. It's hard to see Ezekiel Elliott not being a really good option here at one of the top tier price points, along with McCaffrey, Kamara, and Cook.
Yeah, to me, this screams like a game where both sides are going to run the ball a lot, especially because Dak Prescott's not going to have Tyron Smith out there.
Yep.
Dak Prescott, I don't have the full sample size, but I've seen enough kind of snippets of it online and listened to enough people talking about it where he really does drop off a cliff without Tyron Smith in there not protecting his blind side. I think.
Well, Rodgers could be without Adams too.
That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, there's it just kind of benefits both sides, I think, to run the ball more. And, Green Bay's giving up 142 yards per game on the ground right now. Bad yards per rush numbers, bad grades from PFF. One of their worst graded categories on the defense, a 58 graded run defense for the Packers. So if you're going to lean on the run game here, and I think you need to, I think this is the Zeke spot. We haven't seen him get there yet. The ownership on him looks reasonable. I'm certainly going to try to find ways, much like I did this week with McCaffrey and Eckler, to try to find ways to get McCaffrey and Zeke in the same lineups because I think those guys have just gigantic ceilings, and I'd rather pay up a running back.
One guy that stands out to me too, not because he's been producing monster fantasy totals, but because he needs to get more opportunities, and I think he probably will. Now, this is honestly just a hunch, but something's not working for Houston, and I don't understand why Duke Johnson doesn't get more opportunities. So for me, this is simply on a whim, on a hunch, knowing that he's been way more productive than almost anyone on this team. I mean, look, he's averaging, Spags, 6.3 yards per carry. He has long runs of 40, 19, 32. I mentioned all of this yesterday. 57 yards on 9 carries, 31 on 6, 56 on 6, and he just isn't getting any opportunities. And even worse, last week, this past Sunday, he only had 3 targets in the passing game, while Carlos Hyde had 5. So I don't want to take away from what Hyde's done. He's been all right. But the fact that Duke Johnson is used so sparingly in an offense that's been able to get nothing going, and you would think would want to check down with their offensive line collapsing, is beyond me.
Yeah, I think it's sort of the Bill O'Brien old school mentality, which, he's really shown an inflexibility with how to learn and improve and kind of change things. But we see the similar player in Austin Eckler have a lot of success this year. And he's mentioned Duke Johnson, big yards per carry, also 4.8 yards after contact per rush, which is one of the better numbers in the league. So even though he's a smaller player, he's still doing a good job weaseling through those tackles, doing a good job kind of finding creases in space. I would agree you'd want to use him more. They don't seem like they want to go that way. I don't know what has to change for them to do so, but I agree. He deserves the opportunity. I can't trust it. If you want to take some dart throws in a GPP, I get it at his price point, but they want to go to Carlos Hyde. They want to just run the ball, get 3 yards in a cloud of dust over and over again whenever they do run. I guess that's how they're going to play because Bill O'Brien's a genius, an offensive genius. That's what he was hired for.
Yeah, he's sure he's sure living up to that name. Anybody else that's right now projected for very little ownership stand out to you guys? Or you know what? It could be someone that's projected for more that you think shouldn't be. You have guys like Sonny Michel below 1%, Jalen Samuel at 0.2%. There's a few guys here, not to say I'm in love with them, but anybody pop off the page at you?
I'm going to say, I do kind of like this one, but Fournette being so chalky kind of throws me for a loop. And I get he just ran for 220 yards last week. Certainly going to be some recency bias there. And I defended him on the show last week with Sal, actually on both strategy shows. For some reason, I ended up defending Leonard Fournette in every piece of content I did last week because it's not his fault. The line has just been bad. He's been a good yards after contact runner. Didn't play enough of him despite defending him in every piece of content I did. But Carolina's run defense has been bad. I think the pass defense has been good. The coverage has been good. I think it's another nice spot for him. But man, as chalk, we saw what happens here sometimes with Jacksonville, where the game just gets away from him. He doesn't get quite as many looks. He's got more targets here, getting almost 6 targets per game. That's certainly a positive. But he can have one of those days where he just doesn't get a touchdown and doesn't get 200 yards, and that puts him at 18 points, and that's not enough to win you a tournament. So I think there's some risk there going against a Carolina team who can kind of squeeze the life out of a game.
Yeah, their defense has looked really, really good. Talking wide receivers, before we do, though, Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports is the sponsor of the NFL Strategy Show. They got the 350K baller this week, $35,000 up top to first place. Some big-time free rolls and some no management fee contests, meaning everything paid into it by the player gets paid out back to the player. And you can get your $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points by simply signing up through us at awesemo.com. Go to awesemo.com. I'm going to see if we can get someone to post it in this chat. But if you go to awesemo.com, you click on the MLB tab, you'll see the Spotlight Hitters article. We got to get it out of MLB too, Spags, because, that's coming to an end. But
yeah, no, that's EMAC though, because that's EMAC's just the guy. He gets all the conversion credits for all these things when we plug it on all these shows. That's why your old pal gets so much content out there, because he's just reaping all the benefits, article by article.
All those huge benefits. Yeah.
It's so much. EMAC's working on commission, isn't he?
Go to the Spotlight Hitter article right on the landing page for the MLB, and you'll see the link. It's a free article. The link's right at the top.
I got the link in the chat now. So go click that link. Go use that promo code AWESEMO. Get your $30 in YSRPs. Well, if you know, YSRP is just like real money, man.
Yes, you can win, play, and ultimately withdraw all of that money on the site, assuming you actually win money, $30 and then YSRPs. Okay, there it is. Thanks for posting it in the chat there. Just click that link posted by Awesemo in the YouTube chat. It'll take you there. Get your YSRPs, $30 upon depositing. Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, the sponsor of the Deeper Dive and the NFL Strategy Show, of course. All right, Spags, been waiting for your opinion on this. Keenan Allen right now projected at the highest owned wide receiver. Now, I get why, of course. But how do you come to terms with, say, the volume that's going to be there, and then the fact that he's likely going to be shadowed by Chris Harris Jr.? Pro Football Focus right now has it in all caps, meaning that it is expected to be a shadow situation. Harris Jr. doesn't have the best grade this year, but we know that he is a very good corner, particularly in the slot. Does it even matter, though, what the type of volume Keenan Allen is seeing? What's your lean here?
So, by the way, I had no idea that's what the caps meant.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You just changed my life, because that is something I was like, why do they do that? I've thought this before and had no idea why.
Like it was just some type of weird quirk in the. They're
like, we really like this guy. He's great. We just want to yell his name from the mountaintops. But that's, I'm not worried about the matchup. Honestly, I think individual matchups, other than a handful of cornerbacks rather, don't scare me off. Like, I'm scared of Tre'Davious White. I'm a little scared of Stephen Gilmore. I think there are a few guys in that tier. I'm not scared of Darius Slay, no matter how much the YouTube chat wants me to be scared of Darius Slay. I'm never afraid of Darius Slay. But I think a lot of these guys out here fit that criteria where, like, I think we do kind of overrate them. It's like, oh, Marshawn Lattimore. Ooh, like, I don't think he's a bad corner by any stretch. He's probably better than most of the league, but still a guy where I don't think he's in that elite tier of, like, wow, like, you watch Tre'Davious White play, you know that man is oppressing things. Like, we watched Josh Gordon run around the field against him. He's not getting open. He's not getting space. So I'm not worried about Chris Harris. I think this actually is a really nice bounce back spot for Keenan Allen. I think, the game should be more competitive than one versus Miami, which is really why Keenan Allen didn't get there. Just didn't need to do anything. I mean, that's basically what it was. Inman caught enough passes to make it work. Eckler got the touchdowns. Also, Troy Pope, of course, as we all expected, got the touchdown. So, yeah, like, I think this game should be more competitive. I think Joe Flacco could keep up with a crappy Chargers defense. So, to me, this is the Keenan Allen spot where if he's chalked this week, there's less red flags that should have been obvious last week, which, just like what Awesemo talks about, if a game gets away, you're going to see less volume for an elite wide receiver. And I think that's what we saw firsthand last week. I don't think that'll be the case this week.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I guess one of the things that I like to look at is the other guys priced up top. What relation do we have in terms of how much we like them? So you've got Keenan Allen, who I still think is underpriced, just given the volume he's expected to see. I don't expect Adams to play, but you have Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Evans. I mean, you'd mentioned White and a couple of other guys. Does Marshawn Lattimore scare you? A guy who has made Mike Evans' life hell over the past couple of years.
No, I don't think so. I think, in the dome, I think there's enough ability for a deep ball passer like Mike Evans to get there. And, it might be more of a Godwin spot. Again, I think still, like, just because you mentioned, like Lattimore is a cornerback who is a tough one, but still a guy I'm not afraid of it overall. And I think Jameis Stacks, goddamn, if this bastard ropes me in again, swear to God, Jameis Stacks look kind of appealing in the dome. knowing what we know of, like, maybe we don't buy in on Bridgewater. I think Michael Thomas's price is down. He's at a really nice spot. 6,600 for Michael Thomas on DK. I get Teddy Bridgewater sucks. He doesn't throw it deep. He's still targeting Michael Thomas at a high clip. He had 9 targets last week. So I think this could be a game stack here. And if that is the case, I can't do a lot of Jameis. I really, especially coming off of a big game, it's terrifying. But I think he can make production for Evans and for Godwin, and never for OJ Howard. That seems to be the case there.
Yeah, this matchup scares me, man. I do think this Saints defense is like legit, like really legit. But then Jameis just does stuff that makes him look good, right? So
yeah, I mean, he'll make it easy for him for sure. And they seem to get the sense, like, the defense seems to get they have to carry it, because Teddy Bridgewater is not, he's not going to make explosive plays to Ted Ginn if the defense doesn't carry the load. So, I think the defense can certainly keep rising to the occasion, and Jameis isn't chalk. So I think that's sort of where I'm like, all right, maybe I could play this bastard again after what he's done to me time and again.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out. Where do you stand on guys? You mentioned Thomas. I mean, Thomas is not going to be a guy that rips off 250-yard touchdowns, but he could be someone that has 11 receptions on 12 targets for 120 yards and a score, and you'd be okay with that, which is why he's getting ownership. But right now we've got Hopkins and Julio up there as well. Teams are, blanketing them, doubling them, making life really difficult. They square off against each other this week. And right now, Watson and Ryan both look like they're going to get some ownership, which, will translate into ownership for these two receivers. Do you like either of them more than Allen or Thomas?
I think I would still like Allen the most. And the price point for Thomas, I think, kind of puts him in that Le'Veon Bell area where you're like, wow, this guy's probably too cheap, even if, I don't buy into the overall situation for him. Julio, so this is weird. Julio getting 9.3 targets here. As you mentioned, he's been seeing a lot of bracket coverage, which has always been kind of an issue for him. But still, 9.3 targets per game. Austin Hooper, 8.3 targets per game.
It's crazy.
Dirk Cutter is the offensive coordinator, and that's sort of, I think, part of what people miss out on with OJ Howard thing is, like, you go from Dirk Cutter, who really loves his tight ends and his wide receiver twos, to the situation there with Byron Leftwich and Bruce Arians, where they don't maybe use the tight end quite as much. And I think that's sort of what Austin Hooper's getting the benefit of. And Hooper's looking good, man. He's running a lot of routes. He's running 37 routes per game. Granted, they've been behind a lot, but yeah, I think a Julio stack, but like, it's just Julio maybe doesn't have quite as much upside, or at least hasn't had it this year, because they have enough weapons there. Ridley Sanu's also been running a bunch of routes, and he's always as steady as can be. Like, there's ways to get there without Julio for this Atlanta offense. And I think that's sort of what we're seeing more this year, where Dirk Cutter seems to want to spread it around a bit more rather than force feed Julio when he's being double covered.
Yeah, and well, think of this too. I mean, just to kind of reinforce what you're saying, Julio has a 21.6% target share in this offense. Austin, like I said, 21.6%. Austin Hooper's at 19.3. I mean, That's pretty crazy. Mohamed Sanu is at 18.1. And if those, by the way, market share of targets, target share, whatever you want to call it, sometimes that can be such a misleading stat, Spags. And what I mean by that is you could have a team like Atlanta, where Matt Ryan's averaging 44 pass attempts per game, and Julio only has a 22% target share, except he's averaging almost 10 targets per game. And then you could look to a team like, say, Minnesota, and I don't know what it is, and Thielen has a 30% target share, except Cousins is only throwing 20 times a game. So you have to take volume heavily into consideration here when you're looking at something like that, because 15% might equal 25% depending on what team you're on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. I think just the thing for me is that you could see the offense flow other ways, but yeah, you're right. Julio's still getting a good amount of targets. I mean, getting over 9 targets a game.
I'm just saying I'm talking about in general, just when we're looking at target share, not even with Julio, just in general, how it can be a little bit misleading is all.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think, look, he's still getting red zone targets. He's getting 1 red zone target per game, getting 2 targets to 20 plus yards per game. Like, there's still a lot of positives for Julio. I just think it's not like the Atlanta offense of previous years where it's like, we're only moving the ball if we get it to Julio. And I think now we have these weapons here, which they're showing more of a willingness to take advantage of, where I don't think Julio's as much of a lock, whereas like for the Chargers, you're going to go to, Emmons hurt now. So who are you going to? Mike Williams is going to be back in there maybe, but Keenan Allen's the guy you go to, where I could throw it to Ridley, I could throw it to Hooper, I could throw it to Sanu. I think there's more ways for Atlanta to get there, which maybe Julio isn't quite as necessary.
Yep. No, I don't disagree with that whatsoever. Uh, is there any concern though that the Broncos just do everything they can to take everything away from Keenan Allen?
That's certainly possible. I guess that depends on the idea of the Broncos being able to do that. And I don't know if they've shown the ability to be able to do
I don't
that
think
this
they
year.
have.
Yeah, I mean, they're not looking great so far. The Vic Fangio defense not quite porting over as well to Denver, and they just lost Bradley Chubb too to the ACL injury for it's gonna put him out for a while. So yeah, like I'm not a buyer on Denver, but I think, I'm not a buyer on Houston's defense either. Their coverage has been terrible this year. Run defense also has regressed. They've been really looking bad as a defense, even though they did kind of press Kyle Allen enough, mostly because he got unlucky with some lost fumbles. But yeah, like I think this Atlanta offense is in a good spot, probably a better spot overall than the Chargers offense. But still, like Keenan Allen's just there's nobody to compete for touches there. Other than the running backs, obviously.
Are you buying into Auden Tate for Cincinnati here? Very discounted, but right now getting quite a bit of ownership. And while we're on it, so are guys like Jamison Crowder and Will Fuller, who is yet to show up, but you'd think he'd have to break out at some point. What are your thoughts on these guys hovering around that 10 to 14% range?
So Auden Tate, we're going to talk about him a bit in the behind the number or beyond the number segment that we like to do here. But Auden Tate with no John Ross out there, Auden Tate ran the same amount of routes as Tyler Boyd last week. He's a big body. He's got that kind of agile, lean wide receiver frame you want to see. And we talked about earlier the pace of Arizona, a lot of pace on the other side, can offer some opportunities. Andy Dalton can certainly blow it in a variety of ways, as he's known to do. But still, Auden Tate's been out there getting the routes. He's looked good. He's gotten targets in that one game against Buffalo. He did actually look pretty competent. He did okay on whatever targets he got versus Pittsburgh. There just weren't a lot to go around. So I think Auden Tate's a really interesting play now that John Ross is out for a few weeks. Auden Tate's going to be the go-to receiver outside. I think a guy like him, even Alex Erickson gets back in the mix. I think he's also been a guy who's pretty well targeted whenever he has gotten the chance to run routes. These guys have a big opportunity in front of them this week because Arizona's just shown nothing, and the pace is going to be big.
All right. And of course, we can't get to everybody here. That's why we have the ownership projections and the player projections. So, you guys you've paid to be, subscribers on the site, get access to everything in full. But I want to ask you just about one more situation at wide receiver. And this is something that you nailed before the season started. The Minnesota Vikings receivers here, Adam Thielen and Stefon Diggs, clearly frustrated. Like, first it was Diggs voicing his frustration. Then it was Thielen grumbling after that seeing the 6 loss where they scored 6. I mean, brutal. Against Chicago, tough matchup, no question. But Thielen hasn't been particularly happy. His targets are way down. And you talked about this. You and I did our sleepers, busts, and breakout article for each position. We released it around in June and August or July and August, and it was Diggs and Thielen, two guys that you said would be busts. Not in terms of not having decent years, but simply in terms of not paying off their price tags. So last year, after 4 weeks, get this. 56 targets. Let's see. 56 targets is what Adam Thielen had after 4 weeks. He had double-digit targets in 7 straight games to start the year. And then weeks 14, 15, 16, and 17, his target counts looked much like they do now. He saw only 19 targets over his final 4 games. Over his first 4 games this year, he has 20 targets. So you mentioned you could see Thielen from last season towards the end or resemble that a lot more than he resembled to begin the year, where he literally saw 10 plus targets in 7 straight games. And that's not what we're seeing to start 2019.
Yeah, no, I think that was I just didn't see a way they could sustain both guys averaging over 9 targets a game. And it did seem down the stretch that the offense was starting to favor.
22 targets is what Thielen has.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's not been good for these guys this year. And that was sort of my big fear coming in. I thought we had enough of a sample size down the stretch last year when they forced out John DeFilippo. They really wanted to run the ball, and they did run the ball, even though Dalvin Cook was 100% and out there. I think that was still, a situation where they really dedicated to the run. I think that's what they want to continue to do. But I think at a certain point, you have to realize and take the temperature of the room and realize, like, oh man, these guys need to get something going here. Even if we're not going to feed them every week, like the Giants game is the one where you should be willing to put these guys out there and let them beat them up. because of the low volume still, like I can't imagine Cousins is going to be throwing 40 times a game all of a sudden after throwing 25 times a game right now. But I think still like Diggs would be the guy I would favor because I do think he has the more big play ability to just blow one or two catches out, and that's enough for him to have a day. But I think these guys this week are very in play for me because it's so low now where it has to come up a little bit. It won't be at 9 targets per game like it was last year, but I think they're going to settle in probably somewhere in the 7 target per game range, maybe closer to 8. 7.5 would be what I would think they can get to overall. And I think this matchup is one where you want to feed those guys those easy touches and give them some looks and kind of just placate them because this team can make a run and they can make a run based on running the ball, but they need to keep the receivers happy in the interim.
What price, though, do they need to be at, like Thielen, before you feel comfortable playing him? Are you okay at 6,700 here, where he's more expensive than Michael Thomas, pretty much the same price as Tyler Boyd, who will likely be without John Ross, cheaper than or more expensive than Fitzgerald by 700? What are your thoughts on that price point, though? Because I think that comes into play pretty heavily here on a deep slate.
Yeah, that's a good point. The $100 difference favoring Thielen does not seem well deserved at all. But the matchup against the Giants is one that's just so bad. I mean, they're giving up a pretty high TD rate, 6.3% passing touchdown rate, and that's going to drop. That's actually lower than it should be because of Dwayne Haskins again, kind of skewing the results quite a bit in that last performance. But I think they are just so bad with passing where one of these guys can have value. I'll probably also have some stacks, even though that's not the most comfortable feeling because I don't know the Giants can keep up with the Minnesota defense. But I still think that these guys can have value, and I want to have some shares of them. Thielen right now we have at 9%. Diggs we have at under 5. I think that sort of would be probably my cap for it, but I want to make sure I get some of those guys in, even if the prices are kind of dumb, just because they have that upside and a squeaky wheel. This is like the peak squeaky wheel narrative. So we'll see if it bombs again and Dalvin Cook goes nuts, then that's life. We should have known better, but yeah, I think they're worth kind of having some taste of just in the hopes that like there's just so much noise around. You're getting ESPN homepage articles about it and about like local Minnesota radio shows. That's like a hubbub, like a bubbling up thing where you got to just kind of deal with it in some way for them, I think.
Yeah, it is squeaky wheel gets the grease. Let's see if he does. All right, tight ends here, and then we're going to look inside the numbers to close out today's show. You got some good stats for us, Spags, and we'll dive deep into them. Of course, all of them applicable for Week 5, as we are only a few days away now. Right now, Austin Hooper looking like he's going to be pretty chalky at tight end. Nobody crazy, nobody outlandishly high, but Austin Hooper's up there again, and it's one of these spots where Matt Ryan throws a lot. You know, when you're attempting 40, 50 passes a game, everyone should get involved enough. The problem is 9 targets for Hooper is a lot more impactful than 9 targets for Julio Jones when he's half the price. Are you going back to Hooper this week?
Hooper's a guy I've loved. I had an argument with Josh in our preseason previews last year where I was like, I think Hooper's a top 5 tight end, at least a top 10. And he was like, no way. And I think there's just a really big connection with Matt Ryan that's been there. Also fun to find a way to make Josh being wrong appear on a show that he's not even a part of. You got to get him whenever you can. But yeah, like Austin Hooper getting targeted on 22% of his routes run. He's running almost 40 routes per game, which would put him up there. I mean, that puts him in the Zach Ertz tier just in terms of route volume and also just being targeted. Like he is a guy that Ryan looks for quite a bit. Gets red zone targets as well, getting 1 red zone target per game. Gets a few deep targets, not a ton, but he does get some 20-plus yards targets. Still under 0.5 per game, but still like it's a look there. It's an opportunity for him to get out and run. So I like Hooper on a slate where we don't have Kelsey. We do have Zach Ertz, but we don't have a lot of great tight ends who we've become accustomed to playing a lot. I do think it's a spot where I don't mind going to Hooper here. Does make him a bit uncomfortable as chalk, but it could be kind of a spot like last week with Will Dissly where it's like, hey, this guy's getting volume. At a certain point, you need to trust the volume and the opportunity in front of him. And in a game where it could be a shootout, you probably have to trust some Austin Hooper at a reasonable price point too.
Yeah, Jordan Aikens and Tyler Eifert getting a little bit of love. Look, I'll be honest, I'm tempted to get Tyler Eifert. I don't love the guy. I don't love his injury history by any stretch. Really one of the most checkered injury histories of any active player right now. Not including Jordan Reed, but he is cheap. Arizona's been decimated by opposing tight ends. I mean, absolutely hammered, almost 30 fantasy points per game. And Andy Dalton might look to get the ball out early to a guy like Eifert, who isn't on the field for that many snaps, but's running, 20, 25 routes a game. And then guys like Jordan Aikens, Noah Fant, those guys are all in this 4 to 6% range right now, at least. We can talk, of course, about guys like Andrews, Ertz, and Waller and Ingram, but I don't think they deserve as much attention just based on, hey, they're good players. Play them if you want. What about these 4 to 6% guys that I just referenced?
Eifert would be my favorite by far.
Me
Jordan
too.
Aikens, a guy who's been a
That's
little bit
right,
more
Spags.
involved.
Let's get on that Eifert mobile, man. Ride it all the way
I,
to a torn ACL.
Yeah, look, there's a decent chance he leaves missing a limb. I think there's so, especially in a pace-up game too. He's gonna be running more plays, so it's just his hip's just gonna fall off at some point.
Oh, it's just gonna explode, erupt, sending shrapnel into the stands.
The spontaneous combustion of Tyler Eifert will be entertaining to see on live TV. But yeah, no, I agree, man. I think it's a good spot going against Arizona. Arizona's been a funnel defense, has given up a lot to tight ends. Will Dissly was in that spot. Eifert's running more routes. His routes per game are on the upswing. He's taking a little bit more away from CJ Uzoma every week. He looks healthy enough out there. I played him in some showdown lineups on Monday, which were worthless because of Andy Dalton mostly. But I think Eifert's at a price where I don't mind him. I'd much rather have him than Aikens. Aikens, a guy who just kind of got lucky with some touchdowns, and now people are going to play him. No, thank you. I think that's good without that. I trust Fuller and Hopkins getting that volume. I trust Kiki Cutie getting that volume. It's not going to go to Jordan Aikens. Same thing with Noah Fant, not really buying in there either. If you want to go to a guy like Waller, who's got a gigantic target share, who seems like an important part of that Oakland offense in a game which, they're going to be in London. So who knows how that goes? Who knows if he gets some bad fish and chips in this system? That was a bad one. But there's ways that could go south. Like, I don't mind taking the value with a guy like Eifert, hoping he does have 2 touchdown upside and he has the athletic ability to get it done. But yeah, Hooper, I think you get more comfortable the more you dig down the slate,
I think so too. And look, if you're playing Eifert, you're taking a risk, right? Like, if you're listening to us right now, I'm like, all right, 100% Tyler Eifert. That probably isn't the sharpest idea. But look, if he's had 5 targets in 3 of 4 games, no more than 5, but 5 targets in 3 of 4 games, this will clearly be the best matchup he's had. He's faced Pittsburgh. Dalton had no time to get the ball out. Buffalo's defense has looked really legit. San Francisco's defense much improved. And then Seattle, somewhere in the middle of the road. Now you face an Arizona team that has just hemorrhaged fantasy production to tight ends. I guess the way I see it, Spags, is if there ever was a spot, it would be this. It doesn't mean it will happen, but if there ever were a spot for Tyler Eifert to come up and give you 5 for 50 and 2 touchdowns, this could be the one. So that's where I'm at. Is there anyone else at tight end that you like?
Also, just one thing, just to close the loop on Eifert fully. Also, no John Ross out there with that shoulder injury. That leaves 8 targets per game out. That leaves a big hole in the middle of the field out. I think so. Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons, and also a 49% DVOA boost to tight ends according to Football Outsiders for Arizona's defense. So, let's just tout Eifert up until he's like 50%.
Yeah, exactly. I really hate Eifert this week. Do you have anybody else?
Just scanning through now. I'm out on the OJ Howard thing. I really haven't played him at all this year. I don't see going back there.
It's inexplicable, Spags.
He's just not a focal point, I think, is really what it is. And maybe he should be. You could make those arguments all day. I could see why you would, but
not even a focal point, just involved.
Yeah, no, look, I think the worst possible outcomes for people. I think OJ Howard was a guy we both weren't really big on the preseason either. And I think it's really come out to be right to the wildest degree, where I figured, he's not going to be a top 4 tight end maybe, but I think, he's still a guy who's going to be in the mix. He's not even a top 10 tight end right now. So not going there. Maybe Jimmy Graham, because there's no Devontae Adams out there. He did have a bigger day when Adams went out. He was a more focal target. So maybe that's something to go to. But I'd rather pay $200 more and get Austin Hooper. So, oh God, chalk Austin Hooper, chalk Tyler Eifert week. Going to be a blast.
Yeah, that's tough. Oof. Yeah, I think really that's pretty much it. We'll cover more throughout the week, of course. Sal Vetri and I will do our game-by-game breakdown tomorrow. We'll do lineup building on Friday and then a final tune-up on Saturday. Let's hit some inside the numbers, but I wanted to ask you, Spags, I wanted to ask you to tell the listeners, for anyone that hasn't seen it yet, your showdown videos, your short showdown videos that literally if you're at your lunch break at work, pull that up, on a Thursday and pop the lineup in after watching these because they're great, they're to the point, and they're informative. for anyone that doesn't know about him, give a quick explanation because they've gotten a lot of great feedback and a ton of views to start him off.
Yeah, so on Mondays and Thursdays for the Monday Night Football game, the Thursday Night Football game, I'm doing a showdown breakdown. I was doing them last year, and I did pretty well last year. But this year, I think Google's been really kind to me with the view counts overall.
You're crushing,
but basically,
man.
just under 5-minute video breaking down kind of the key plays on each slate. Obviously, unfortunately, you can't always surface the Jordan Howard and Jalen Samuels plays, but I try to give the key lineup construction points, the data points that are most relevant to me. And I think that's sort of the main thing for showdowns is trying to find data that justifies your arguments, that justifies the story you're telling each lineup build. So that's what I try to do. But yeah, under 5 minutes flat. So check them out on Mondays and Thursdays. Obviously, check out everything here, but we do a lot more long form content. So you just want to get something in fast and have a good read on the slate. I'll be coming out with that tomorrow morning. So go check that out. And thanks for introducing that plug there, Lofty. I appreciate it.
I got you, bro. I got you. And for all you guys that are watching, we always appreciate a thumbs up. Mm-hmm. Like the video. If you do like the video, it helps us keep the lights on. Really helps us continue to grow the site and produce the free content like we do on youtube.com. So if you hit us with a thumbs up, like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, it's greatly appreciated, and good things will happen to you as a result, or so I've been told. All right, Spags, let's take a dive deep beyond the numbers, starting with the Washington Redskins quarterback situation. It's Dwayne Haskins. He had a 53% completion rating, 17.6% interception rate, 10.5% sack rate, and a negative 1.6 yards per attempt versus the reviled New York Giants defense. Is that right? Negative 1.6 yards per attempt?
It's adjusted yards per attempt. I meant to fix that. But yeah, so basically he ended up with less yards per attempt on each overall play.
Incredible.
Yeah. He's a marvel. He's truly a marvel in that 1 week sample.
It really was. He's got the Patriots defense now. They're allowing a 52% completion rating while deflecting 26% of opposing quarterbacks' passes. That's an awesome and ridiculous number, by the way, Spags. They're intercepting 6.6%. and have allowed no passing touchdowns on the year. Now, let's be clear. This is a very good defense. They also have not faced really any good offenses and a hobbled Ben Roethlisberger. Is this defense worth its premium price in Week 5, Spags? Let's go beyond the numbers and get your answer.
So this has been one of the things which has been really a bailout pretty much every week whenever I've had one or two guys who fail. Keenan Allen killed so many of my lineups last week, but the Patriots defense at 15%, I think 10% ownership in some of the tournaments bailed me out time and again. And I knew going against Josh Allen, I love Josh Allen. Josh Allen not ready for the bright lights of the Patriots defense. He's a very talented player who has some obvious flaws in terms of
he saw some bright lights, all right. It was just when his eyes were closed and he was laying on his back.
I didn't think that was that bad of a hit either. Like, it wasn't a great hit.
He lowered his shoulder.
Yeah. He's a big dude. He's 6'5". And he runs for yards. Like, you can't have it both ways. Like, I don't know. So
I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying if you're going to run it and not give yourself up and lower your shoulder. Look, should it have been flagged? Yeah. Suspension? I don't think so. He lowered his shoulder and it braced, he braced for the hit. So I don't know.
I agree with you. I think you're right. But he's just a big dude who as you mentioned, just runs that same way every play. So he's not a guy like Russell Wilson who's sliding the second that there's contact, or some of the other guys out there, like Tom Brady's not lowering his shoulder. So I think there is there should be a little bit of leeway on the rules. Obviously, he did see stars as he did have a concussion. He's in the concussion protocol. But yeah, I think Haskins is the worst possible outcome of Josh Allen, where every play is just Josh Allen's worst. And he's not as mobile. I mean, he ran a little bit, but that's not what he's known for. He's kind of a statuesque quarterback in general. So I think this is a spot. New England's defense on DraftKings is 4,300. They're comparably priced in terms of being high priced everywhere. But I think the upside is so huge for New England every week because they're getting after quarterbacks. They're playing with pride where they don't want to give up touchdowns. And obviously, no team ever wants to give up touchdowns. But Bill Belichick seems to be really savoring the defense this year, about as close to joy as you'll ever see from him on a football field. So I like paying for the Patriots this week. And I don't know what their ownership is, but I would be curious to see it because I think they are the one defense you could lock in who actually has gigantic upside and you're not playing the variance game quite as much.
Yeah, good comment here. Jason K says, I'm a Bills fan, and that was BS. Well, yeah, you're a Bills fan.
It wasn't a great hit, but when Josh Allen's 6'5" and he shoulders everybody, like you gotta, I mean, look, he slid. I get it. You don't hit the guy when he's sliding, but he is still like, he's still got the body type where he could be doing a trick. You don't know.
It wasn't,
stuff.
it wasn't a clean hit. I'm not saying that, but I don't think it was like, I don't think the motive was just downright vicious. I mean, plus it was slightly overshadowed by what Vontaze Burfict did to Jack Doyle.
Yeah, right. There's a difference there. I don't think it's you don't have the pattern either of like Burfict has of years of doing assholey things and
Burfict
smiling afterwards. Yeah. Like the clip of him jogging off the field, like gleefully smiling afterwards. I'm like, what a piece of shit. Like, I don't think anybody felt that way when they hit Josh Allen.
No.
Yeah, but you gotta be able to hit a guy who's gigantic and also evades tackles at a higher rate. Like, you gotta be allowed to hit a guy who runs.
Even when the guy on the sidelines for Detroit was smiling and laughing after the face mask on Miles Sanders that turned him into the girl from The Exorcist. I'm pretty sure he was laughing because he couldn't believe he didn't get called for it, not because he wanted to see the guy hurt. I'm a hardcore Eagles fan. I thought the missed call was egregious, but I also don't get, I try to settle down a bit when it comes to that stuff. I don't think he was gleefully saying, "Oh man, I wish I broke his neck, but that'll do." Come on, man. It's a little much, but anyway, so final answer, because we got a little sidetracked. Final answer, are they worth it, the New England Patriots defense in week 5?
I think so. I mean, it looks like right now we have them at 6% ownership on DraftKings, comparably owned on all the sites, it looks like, based on our early run of ownership here. I like the Patriots quite a bit here, and I do think they have gigantic upside. You could certainly have, the $2,200 team who goes off and does that, but for cash, I would play the Patriots. I would find a way to make that work. And for tournaments, I would go over the field on the Patriots because every single week they have been destroying everybody. And if Haskins is in there, you might as well have Dennis Haskins, Mr. Belding out there at quarterback, because he is. I wanted to get that. I've been thinking about it all day.
You were teeing that up.
I was just roping it in for the moment. That's why he got a number.
Well, good thing I asked you to repeat your question because I wasn't listening before.
But Dennis Haskins, Mr. Belding, a great man, and possibly a better quarterback than Dwayne Haskins. Dwayne Haskins will have his moments of usefulness, but this week versus the Patriots, I just don't get why you don't put Keenan out there and let him take the abuse, because Haskins is going to have one of those classic David Carr days when he was on the Texans where he just gets sacked over and over again, throws picks. He's going to lose all his confidence and look even worse the rest of the year.
I honestly, they are expensive. There's no question. And I'm glad you brought this up as one of the topics, because it's an important one, because generally you don't want to pay that much for the Patriots, road teams, this and that. But man, it doesn't really matter here. This feels like a Matt Schaub type situation where you get 3 pick sixes.
Yeah, I mean, the ceiling is really, kind of unlimited for the Patriots. They are bringing great pressure. They are really good with coverage. They're tackling at a high level. Like, they're doing nothing wrong defensively. Maybe they don't keep up with the Chiefs. Maybe they can't stop Patrick Mahomes the same way. But I think they can really get to Dwayne Haskins and make his life miserable, or Case Keenum or Colt McCoy, whatever the Redskins want to do when they're this completely disastrous, disorganized franchise. Whatever they do is going to be good for the Patriots. So I'll pay that price.
Yeah, you're not wrong. So Auden Tate ran 43 routes last week. This game was just dreadful from start to finish for the Bengals, but may have been a bit of a bright spot there. So I wanted to just pull this up quickly so I don't lose it. Week 4. 43. John Ross ran 28. Tyler Boyd ran 43 as well. Auden Tate, 1.16 yards per route run. That was way above Tyler Boyd. Now, this is only 1 week, of course, but all 3 of these receivers saw 6 targets. Tate had 4 receptions. Ross and Boyd had 3 apiece. Ross will be out against the league's fastest paced team in Arizona in a game where the Bengals have for this team, a very high implied total of 25.5 points. Is Tate the cheap receiver to go with this week, knowing that his ownership is where it is, but also he's only 3,500 on DraftKings?
So yeah, I would say, I think the way I realized the way that I write these, I'm writing them as leading questions, which the answer is yes. But yes, I do think Auden Tate is the cheap receiver.
Based on all of the gushing over the guy you talk about before the question comes.
It's like, here's all the reasons he's great.
Right.
So is he very great to
Right.
play this?
I really love this guy. Here's why. Now ask me if he's good.
That's why we go beyond the numbers. So
we go straight to subjectivity.
I think Auden Tate's talented. I think is the main thing. He's 3,500 on DraftKings. He's cheap on Yahoo. He's cheap on Fantasydraft. He's cheap everywhere. I think it's a nice spot for him. He's getting 3.9 yards of separation on his targets, which is a good number. Again, the pace is there. The opportunity is there with no John Ross. That's 8 targets per game left behind, as well as a lot of deep plays. If Auden Tate gets those deep plays, like I do think Alex Erickson is a guy who could take some of them off the table. But if Tate has, I think he doesn't have John Ross speed, but he's probably a better route runner than John Ross, even though he's a younger player. I like Auden Tate quite a bit at 3,500 on DraftKings, man. He opens up a lot. Him and like Hooper or him and Eifert in a stack with Dalton, like you can get in Zeke, you can get in McCaffrey, you can get in Allen. You pretty much get everything you want. Get in the Patriots defense. I think there's a lot of things that Auden Tate and the Bengals stack opens up. And I believe in the Cincinnati offense more than they showed in Pittsburgh. And I think in a spot against Arizona, it's about as good as it's going to get. And the defense sucks enough where that game could end up really high scoring.
It sounded like you were going to say, I believe in the Cincinnati offense more than they believe in themselves. That's encouraging.
Probably true. But
it probably is. Yeah.
That helps Dalton. Like Dalton sucks, but he's better at home. Like he has his 4 touchdown games at home. That is what he does.
Yeah, no question. All right, I'm going to ask you one more that you wrote up, and then I have one for you. Just kind of off the top of my head that was discussed a bit yesterday, but it'd be good to get your opinion. But first, the oft criticized Joe Flacco has recently been lambasted by the media, but he's averaging 37 pass attempts per game, including 23 and 21% target shares for Emmanuel Sanders and Courtland Sutton, respectively. His price is down to Haskins levels, to Luke Falk levels, in a matchup against the Chargers defense that's allowing 74% completion rate and 7% passing TD rate. Can Flacco have another completely under-the-radar good fantasy week? Well, forgive me for guessing, but I feel like you might say yes.
You've gotten the game off. I think that's
5 weeks.
Figured it out. Can't fool you. You're too good at this hosting.
I am studied. But let me throw in a wrinkle to this question though. Do you believe that the Chargers pass defense is as bad as it is, knowing that like they actually Desmond King is solid, and I feel like this actually, Casey Hayward, they should be better than they are. So how do you come to terms with something like that? And feel free to work that into your love for Flacco.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they do have some decent players out there. Casey Hayward really is the one who has historically been the best play. And according to PFF, he'll be shadowing Emmanuel Sanders, I see. So because of the caps lock thing that you taught me earlier. So now I know that. But yeah, no, I think they're just not as good because they're not generating quite as much of a rush this year. Still a 7% sack rate for him, but not great grades from PFF. I guess that is their best graded one, but still 72 grade in pass rush for PFF isn't that good. Coverage grade of 54 on the year for the Chargers. And Denver is, I think, just going to have to pass more. Like, I think that's sort of what their defense is necessitating from them. I don't think the Chargers are going to have a tough time scoring on Denver's defense. So to me, it's not a great team total. Flacco had the big day last week. You certainly don't want to chase a big Joe Flacco day because they really happen about as much as a full moon. But I think the volume has been there for these guys. Like Sutton's had the 2 touchdown day. He was in the Millionaire Maker winning lineup. Sanders is highly targeted. I think he's a guy even going against Hayward. I think he can find space. I'm not afraid of it. I think at 4,700 on DK for Joe Flacco, that might be a cheap enough price to get there when, you could talk yourself into Luke Falk. I think you talk yourself into Joe Flacco when, all the stuff is swirling. People want to see Drew Lock out there. They want to see different guys in the mix. They want to see anything besides Flacco. But Flacco, from a fantasy perspective, was good last week, and that stack would have gotten you some places. I think you can go back there and hope it does again.
And by the way, he gave them an opportunity. He marched down the field and scored, and the defense, which is supposed to be the backbone of this team, completely unraveled. That game was not on Flacco.
No, I think it's unfair. Like, I think you got to wrap, even last year where he was like playing pretty well for the Ravens. Like, even though Lamar came in and was, like a house of fire and they won more games, but the games that they lost weren't Flacco's fault. He was probably his most accurate last year. He was throwing the deep ball well. Like, he gets a bad rap. And I think it's him and Fournette. Look, Fournette was the guy I defended last week, didn't play enough of. I'll play more Flacco because I'm apparently going to be Joe Flacco defender this week. He's not as bad of a quarterback as it seems. He just keeps getting these kind of crappy situations thrown his way.
All right, so let me ask you this last one before we head out. Christian Kirk looks like he's in legitimate jeopardy of missing time. Cliff Kingsbury's been very vague on this, but if I had to guess, he's not playing this week. Damiere Byrd was out in week 4 and is in jeopardy of missing another week. If that happens to be the case, what we could see is Larry Fitzgerald potentially running all of his snaps all of his routes out of the slot, being that Christian Kirk's running about 50% of them out of the slot. Then you could see Keyshawn Johnson. Now, again, mentioned on yesterday's show, but he is running, this is crazy, 90% of his snaps from the right side this season. If you're wondering whether that's a lot or not, Calvin Ridley's run the second most routes from the right side at 64%. So 90% from the right side, Spags. So then you would assume that he stays there. So what do we get if Kirk and Byrd are out? Trent Sherfield ran a decent amount of routes in week 4. 36 actually led the team in routes run. Kirk 33, Fitzgerald 33, and then of course Keyshawn Johnson at 26. So they cut Crabtree. Andy Isabella has been virtually non-existent. What do you see developing in Arizona in a game that we think could be a shootout for a team that plays at the fastest pace in the league if Kirk and Byrd are out?
I think Sherfield is a bit interesting just because there's so much volume left behind with no Kirk. He was getting 9 targets a game. They were actually getting that Minnesota split of what they had last year, over 9 targets per game for Fitzgerald and for Kirk. So that's a lot left behind. I do think you see more involvement out of David Johnson. We saw him get up to 11 targets last game. Only ran it 11 times, but he got 11 targets. I think that's sort of a good sign for him. Sherfield and Keyshawn Johnson, I think both those guys should be in play. They're not seeing a big share of targets per route, which I think scares me a bit. You want to see these guys, even though Sherfield led the team in targets, he barely got any. I think that's kind of weird. It's like, what is the point of having these guys out there if they're just decoys, basically? Because they're not good decoys by any stretch. But I think it would lead me more to favor Johnson and Fitzgerald. I think there's probably more of a concentration that way. I think flyers on Keyshawn, flyers on Sherfield. I think those are probably the guys I'd want to take some shots at. I think it just makes David Johnson and Fitzgerald more appealing.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Also, they ran 63 offensive plays. Just looking at this now, Cuyler Marie threw 32 times, and David Johnson had, and he ran 4 times. Johnson had 11 carries. So that's 15 more, 47. I guess 6 for Chase Edmonds. Feels like something's missing, but I don't know.
Yeah, something's got to give here. I would think where you're going to see like Johnson really hasn't hit the ceiling we had. He had a nice game last week, but 11 targets and 11 rushes. That's a pretty big number for him. And if that jumped 2 on each side, like that would make him the highest touch running back in pretty much on the slate and probably in the league.
All right.
So yeah, it could be a nice spot for Arizona, even though I know Arizona and Cincinnati. I'm glad actually people seem to be spooked off because Cincinnati does stink and Arizona does kind of stink, but this game could have a lot of fantasy value.
Yeah, I think I'll have quite a bit of it. Now, I think these guys will be pretty popular, but might not be overboard. I think ownership will be at least reasonable. So there it is, Bags. We took a look at early ownership projections, and of course the disclaimer that they will change throughout the week. They always do, but it's nice to get an early look of what we're dealing with. Any final thoughts before we head out for the afternoon?
No, I think, one guy we didn't talk about much, like just keep playing Christian McCaffrey. I think is how I feel every single week. Find a way to pay up and get there. That's been one thing that and the Patriots really have been 2 of my saving graces every single week. So yeah, play Christian McCaffrey. I think, play a good amount of Patriots defense. It doesn't take a lot to get above the field if you want to be conservative and manage your exposures, but play good guys. I think, that's a stupid thing, which a lot of shows do say, but like play the guys who are good and find ways to get there and then figure out your fluff around it. You need to play Keyshawn Johnson to get to McCaffrey in the Patriots defense, or to get to, the equivalent of Eckler or Zeke and McCaffrey, like whatever. I think do find ways to do that because that's how people are winning week after week.
I did mention it a little bit earlier on McCaffrey, just talking about his ownership compared to Cook and Elliott. A lot higher projected owned, actually the highest projected owned player on the slate right now. Once again, it can change. Among McCaffrey, Elliott, and Cook, all of whom are in that 8K range, who do you like the most for this slate?
Oh man, the price on Zeke I think would put me on him first, but McCaffrey is just the dude. I'm floored by him every time. I've been floored by him since college when his Stanford teams would just destroy USC, and he had over 200 all-purpose yards and was just a monster. But people are finally getting to him. I think. Oh, what was the nickname I saw from him? It was shit. It was like Derry something. Oh, Derry Sanders was what somebody was calling him because he is a white man. You see the color of milk.
I had no idea. I thought he grew up on a farm.
No, but he's just so elite, man. He's so talented. He's getting targets. Kyle Allen's making even more use of him. He's more of a necessity for Kyle Allen than he was for Cam Newton, but I'm just a buyer on him. He's really, I think a very singularly talented guy. He's what me as a USC fan, when I wanted Reggie Bush to be coming into the NFL, everything that Reggie Bush could have been, I think McCaffrey is. So I would still favor him on a talent level, but the price on Zeke, and, we talked about the Vikings. I do think Dalvin's going to have some upside. I'd rather have McCaffrey and also rather have Elliott. And I think I'd rather get that Minnesota passing game and get a little weird with it.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us. As always, thanks for hanging out. Hit that like button if you enjoy the show and want to help support us here at awesemo.com. Sal Vetcher and I'll be back with you tomorrow, breaking down game by game, 11 a.m. Eastern time on the NFL Strategy Show. What do you got coming up next, Spags?
I got that showdown breakdown video coming out tomorrow. I've got the rankings video where I go through all the key plays according to Osmo's NFL rankings. I believe that'll also be coming out tomorrow. And on the contrary, Saturday is another large show, which we're doing really great with, really happy with, but a lot of people tuning in. Saturdays, 2 p.m. Easterns when it goes live. And of course, you can watch it whenever before the slate locks after that. But go check that out. We're going to have Adam Pfeiffer from the matchups column at Osmo.com on there, going inside the house, going inside the Osmo family for this week. But got a lot of great guests, got more great guests to come up. So one of them was a pretty big one to me. One of the big Yahoo guys coming on in a couple of weeks, Matt Harmon. So got a lot of stuff going on with that show, which we're happy with. So keep checking that out. And of course, tune in for Alex, if not for me and all my genius takes, my Case Keenum contrarian QB takes. That rat bastard.
Awesemo.com/join, promo code NFL Strategy, all one word. If you want to join the family over there, and be sure to say what's up in the premium Slack chat. Introduce yourself when you sign up. We'll be sure to make you feel welcome. That'll do it for us. Thanks as always for hanging out. We'll catch you back here tomorrow on the Strategy Show. Peace.